Welcome to the Traitors, a Traitors podcast. The Traitors features deep dives into every episode of the multi-award winning hit TV competition show, The Traitors, as well as interviews with contestants from the show. I'm David Bloomberg, and I've been covering reality TV for over 23 years. Right now, I'm one of your co-hosts for Season 2 of The Traitors US, and today we're talking about Episode 4 of that series.
And I'm Matthew, and as well as podcasting. And by the way, The Trader is now a top 10 Spotify TV and film podcast. I also work in TV development and write fiction and poetry and various other things. If you're looking for the Traitors UK coverage, by the way, those episodes are running concurrently, so you may need to skip back to the previous episode or ahead to the next.
After listening to this one.
Well, obviously, yes, not immediately.
Yes.
Last week, David and I covered 3 episodes of The Traitors US with 2 hosts. This week, we're covering 1 episode with 3 hosts. So we're trying something a bit different. It should be fun. I may as well introduce our third co-host right now. We have a fellow Brit for me who is actually a returnee to the podcast. Let's meet them. Our third co-host today is Rob. Rob is a chiropractor working in Yorkshire, and other than working, you'll find him in the kitchen cooking or baking, playing video games, or walking his 2 dogs. He's a huge American Big Brother fan and has watched every season, which he reckons is what made him fall in love with the Traitors, as he really enjoys the mental gameplay and manipulation involved. That sounds very sinister, Rob.
I mean, it sums me up pretty well, I think, yeah.
He just loves mental gameplay and manipulation. Welcome
so
to the
watch
podcast.
watch out.
And Rob, you, like David, are a Big Brother US fan.
That is correct.
That means you already have a bit of an advantage over me, actually. You must know a couple of the players who are in Traitors.
And that's right. In fact, I messaged you as soon as I saw that Dan was in this because he is literally my favorite Big Brother contestant ever. He is incredible. His season 10, which is the season that he won, he just blew my mind. Every week you thought his time was up. His time must be up. And yet somehow he survived all the way to the end and then won. And that was the season that got me hooked on US Big Brother. I enjoyed it, but that was the one where I was like, okay, if someone can do this, someone can do anything. And he's a great contestant to have.
And I also need a bit of a reminder. So we've got Dan. Who else is a Big Brother person? There's Janelle.
Right? Janelle, who I was never particularly a fan of, I guess is the right word, but she was a good contestant. She's entertaining, highly entertaining. But so I'm interested to see how she does in this. She's trying, let's put it that way.
I do have some thoughts on Janelle as an outsider, but I'll save those until we talk about the episode.
Yeah.
And I'll give you my impression of her as someone who doesn't really know her background.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's funny because, one of the things, and I think I mentioned this last week, Matthew, one of the things Dan is known for is Dan's funeral.
Yes.
And now we're having, in this episode, Dan at a funeral, but it's not Dan's funeral. So that's good. Yeah,
I remember you mentioning that. Okay. I need to look up some clips of Dan and put him in context in my mind.
Yeah, I think Entertainment Weekly had a whole in-depth article during the heart of COVID when there was no other content for them to cover. Mm-hmm. They had this in-depth, interview article about Dan's funeral. So I think you should be able to look that up if you want to go that deep a dive.
I really should do my research and be a professional podcaster.
Well, actually, Series 10 and Series 14 of Big Brother US was on our Netflix for a while, but it has gone. I've just checked because I was going to recommend that, but it has gone, unfortunately.
Okay, how sad. I that's the only way that I watch these shows is through legitimate means.
Yes,
yes, all of us.
Now, it's speaking of being very honest, it's time to set up our own game of betrayal and deception. This is the Traitor. Our not-so-secret mission from here on in is to tell one lie to one another, all 3 of us. The lie has to be a fabrication or a made-up fact, big or small, about the traitors, about ourselves, or anything else. For example, I could lie and say that during filming of the funeral scene, the murder victim can be heard knocking on the coffin lid if you turn the volume up. However, I couldn't say the murder victim this episode was my favorite contestant when actually they weren't really. That wouldn't count. So we're looking for fake facts, not fake opinions and thoughts and feelings. At the end of the episode, we each have to put our traitor hunting skills to the test and decide what we thought one another's lies were. Now, this will be a little bit different because there are three of us, so we're going to do a triangle of detection. So, guys, take note here. Well, I've done this once before on the pod, and it actually worked really well. I will guess Rob's lie first. Rob will guess David's. David will guess mine. I've engineered this in a terrible way because David usually guesses mine. So. But hey.
And I feel David's very sneaky with his lies.
David
so
is.
I've got the real challenge here. You did this to get out of it, I'm sure.
No, not at all, not at all. But if the initial guesser is wrong, then the remaining player gets second dibs, so they could give it a go. So actually, we really all need to listen out for one another here.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Does this all make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Yep.
In that case, our game, the Traitor, begins now. And David, I reckon we're ready to dive into the episode.
This episode is an interesting one from a timing perspective because, once again, we have a situation where a very similar episode of The Traitors UK aired on Wednesday night. So there's a bit of deja vu going on in watching parts of this episode of the US. But we'll still discuss it fully in case people haven't seen the UK version. Plus, there are some fun and interesting differences in terms of how everything worked out. And we'll try not to go too much into the UK, but I think it'll probably have a few mentions of things.
Well, I would appreciate that because I actually haven't finished that episode.
Oh, well, talk about doing your research. Oh, my.
No, but I had to watch this episode.
Oh, that's true. That's true. All right, we'll let it go.
Thank you.
Unless, hold on, let me write that down as a possible.
You should write it down. You should put that on a bit of paper. Yeah.
But we begin with Parvati continuing her attempt to poison the faithful. At the end of last week's episode, I thought she was headed for Peter, but instead she gives it to Ekin-Su. Now, based on what we saw of her on the show so far, and also some things I found out about her thoughts outside the show, I am very happy that this is the chosen target.
No idea what you're referencing, but
no.
I
don't know. Should I know? I don't know. Oh, I'm going to Google that later.
My Twitter.
Okay.
Anyway, after taking a drink, Ekin-Su tells Parvati she'd never think she's a traitor and hugs her. Right after that, we are very quickly told that Deontay has left the game, and then Alan just blows right past.
Yeah, I barely even noticed.
Yeah, I mean, it was like very quick. Someone had noticed ahead of time on Twitter that some of the press pictures in the funeral march, you couldn't see Deontay.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, maybe the rumors that he left are true. And I was like, he's probably just sitting in the carriage somewhere already. But no. So I was primed for, possibly him leaving. But yeah, it was whoosh. But it seemed obvious to me that he probably quit because he couldn't take it on an emotional level based on what we saw previously.
Yeah.
And he expanded on that in an interview with Us Magazine, saying it really drew back the condition that I was in as a child. People accusing each other of doing things that may not be true. And the article also noted that he's battled depression in the past. So either he really didn't know what he was getting himself into on the Traitors, or he just didn't realize how it would affect him when he sent out a couple faithfuls in a row.
Yeah. Normally when someone, I say normally, it doesn't happen that often, but occasionally people have left the show under very mysterious circumstances. I think Canada that happened, right? But I guess this time we sort of have a reasonable understanding of what's going on here.
I mean, in Canada, at least they said he broke the rules.
Yeah.
They didn't tell us what rule. To this day, even as connected as I usually am, these people are keeping their lips sealed. But
I heard that he took the game too seriously and he actually murdered someone.
oh man. Well, it's interesting because he was at their reunion finale party, so that must have been
he was released on bail.
yeah.
So this is definitely a lie.
That was just a joke. That wasn't a lie.
joke,
I'm acknowledging it's not true.
Didn't someone in America one leave unexpectedly as well? I can't think of her name. The blonde.
Yes, but didn't she have COVID?
She had COVID.
COVID. Yeah.
She had COVID. Yeah.
And then there were allegations,
but they didn't explain that on the show.
No, they didn't explain it.
Yeah,
right. But then afterwards, there were allegations that they didn't treat COVID protocols well.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, and so it went through all of that. So, anyway, like I said, we just zip right by that and head to breakfast. Dan and Phaedra are first in, and neither has any clue if Parvati succeeded. Luckily, Parvati is next and brings them up to speed. Phaedra isn't happy because she believes it will put a target on her because she voted to banish Ekin-Su. Now, first, I would say she's worrying unnecessarily, and it's more likely to put a target on Janelle due to the fight the two of them had. But I'd also say she should have actually participated in the task if she was going to disagree with it later. So, like, Phaedra, that's your own fault.
Yeah, I didn't understand that line of thinking. I thought, if anything, it would make it look like Phaedra had been framed or something. So I didn't think she had anything to be worried about, really.
I think she's thinking a little too selfishly, which is fine. You're on that show. It's the Traitors. You need to be selfish, but she really didn't need to worry about that. I did enjoy her, like, dear Lord, not Ekin-Su little moment where she kept poor Ekin-Su. And I'm like, well, it had to happen to somebody. It might as well have been
well, poor Ekin-Su, who she voted to banish,
exactly. So yeah, I think she was just worried about herself, which I understand, but she didn't need to. It would have been Janelle, definitely put fire on her more than
right.
I'm sorry, Phaedra.
Yes. Now, people file in as usual, and a few thoughts are given about who it could be that doesn't show up. Sandra comes in with a nasty cut on her forehead from the grave digging mission. She posted on social media about it and said she ran into a tombstone while trying to avoid the lights, and she still has a scar. So...
Yeah, I noticed that right at the end of the episode. I was like, did she have that scar before? And I went onto the internet to look for her promo pictures, and it wasn't there. And then I saw the same thing. Yeah, that she'd run headfirst into a gravestone, which is terrible, really terrible.
It's interesting because George, known as King George in Australian Survivor, injured his head on a challenge very early in the show, and he had a gash on his head on the same season that Sandra's daughter was on. And so he commented on her Instagram post like, oh, look at the similarities there. You know? So,
David, I thought that was your lie about Sandra, and I was poised to write it down, and then Rob corroborated it, so I just sort of sat back. But unless you two have conspired
we could both
together...
be traitors. We could both be traitors.
I specifically mentioned it with the hopes that you would think it was the lie. I didn't expect Rob to verify it and ruin the whole thing.
My job is being very observant about people's bodies, and I was like, I'm sure that scar wasn't there before. So.
It makes it a lot more difficult when there's someone else calling out the truth of things.
I'll be quiet. I'll put me in my place. It's fine. I'll be quiet.
It's more fun this way.
No, I know.
So, CT and Janelle both independently mentioned to us that the Bravo people are clearly working together. Janelle adds that the gamers clique is CT, Dan, Sandra, and Parvati, and the rest are those she thinks are faithful, including Kevin, who is, quote, a faithful, but a really dumb faithful.
Agreed.
Yeah. Ekin-Su walks in and Parvati is confused. So is Phaedra. Now, one difference between the US and UK versions is that the UK Traitors weren't even given a hint that the poison might not work right away, while there was a mention of the possibility that it could be slow acting in the note given to the Traitors in the US.
Yeah.
Apparently the US Traitors didn't read that note very carefully based on their surprise.
I thought the same thing. I didn't know why they were so surprised because Alan specifically said it was a slow burning poison or whatever, slow acting poison. So I thought it would be more obvious to them that nothing would happen straight away. But yeah, and Parvati, she could not hide her confusion.
Yes.
Like the thing is, no one picked up on it, but it looked so obvious that she was just like, "What?" Like,
Yes.
So got away with it.
Yeah. MJ walks in, so everyone presumes John was murdered, and they're very confused. Until John walks in, and they're very confused for a different reason. Alan arrives to set things straight. He explains that someone was poisoned by the traitors in plain sight. But again, it's a slow-acting poison, and they'll be dead by the end of the mission. Peter immediately asks if anyone was given a drink, but we don't see any responses. Ekin-Su tells us she is good at catching people in lies, says the woman who told us she believes in alien conspiracies. Not to mention the stuff I mentioned on my Twitter. The players break up after breakfast into their smaller groups. Larsa says she believes the reason mostly men have gone is that the leader of the traitors is an alpha. Tamara thinks Kevin is the traitor. Meanwhile, Dan suggests that perhaps someone offered another player a chocolate or something like that. Trishelle says someone offered her a drink, but can't remember who. Now, I went back and checked the video of the previous one, and it was Tamara. So if Trishelle had remembered, that could have been an interesting twist in the later discussions. But then she and Janelle talk about how Ekin-Su was so loud last night, and it was bad acting, and they suspect that she's the traitor who did it, and where are they going to be surprised?
Yeah, I was surprised in general throughout the episode. I don't know if you have a different impression of it than I did. I was surprised at how little sort of theorizing there was about how the murder was committed. Like they talked about it a little bit, and they talked about who took a drink. Maybe I'm just comparing it to the UK one. And again, Rob, I don't want to spoil this for you, unless you're lying and you have seen that episode. I felt like they spent the whole time theorizing about who took drinks from who swapped things. I didn't feel like they talked about it, even as the death approached throughout the episode. Ekin-Su herself wasn't really like throwing anything out there. So it just struck me.
I haven't finished the episode, is what I said.
Okay.
So, I've seen it up into the round table. Okay. So yes, I agree. There was a lot of talking about how it could have been done, but in this they did just immediately assume it. No, they did talk a little bit about food because they said, Kevin, you ate loads of food. So he admitted to that as well. But yeah, and I also want to go back to the alpha male thing, because if logically that makes no sense, literally no sense. Why would a man pick off all the other men to leave just because you know there's going to be at least one man traitor? It's not going to all be women, all be men. It's 1 year maybe, but not for a while anyway. So if you pick off all the men, you're making yourself stand out even more. So that just literally makes no sense whatsoever. But that's easy to say watching from the outside, but that's not how the game would be played by anyone who knows, especially they're gamers as well. These alpha men, apparently, apart from Kevin, who I believe is an actor. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they know the games. They understand how these work. They're not going to draw attention to themselves in this kind of really obvious way. So, but she's got a conviction. And I think the other housewives do really listen to her and do really follow her. So yeah, it's not the best of opinions, but
yeah, she seems to have started, she being Larsa, seems to have started from an assumption and just gone from there as if it were true, and the assumption is, well, you wouldn't get rid of the players who are strong at these missions unless you yourself are strong at missions and know that you can continue to get money from the group. Therefore, you must be an alpha male, as if all the missions are going to be like weightlifting or something like that. And you must be an alpha male, and you must be in charge, because you're an alpha male, you must be in charge of all the traitors. And therefore, it just keeps going from this one assumption that is just untrue.
And then I even question her and say, well, what about Ekin-Su? Why would they kill Ekin-Su? Like, well, he doesn't need her either. It's like, well,
Yeah.
if they don't need anyone, then do they really?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like any conspiracy can always incorporate any fact, and so it's like, well, they've killed off the alpha males and this person who is the opposite of an alpha male. Oh, well, obviously they were doing that to try to confuse us. What? And I'll have more thoughts about the logic behind the Ekin-Su thing later, but yeah, then we get going back to Janelle and talking about Ekin-Su and everything else. Dan talks to Parvati, and he says he tells us he doesn't think he can win as a traitor alone, so he has to trust her, as crazy as that sounds. So he confides in her that he thinks they should drop hints that Phaedra went after Ekin-Su in order to break up the housewives group. Then the players all come outside dressed in their finest black for the funeral. And Alan has his black carriage and black horses. And I say they're all dressed in black, but MJ stands out in a mostly white fur coat. She apparently did not get the message.
It's like a Cruella de Vil funeral or something.
Yes. Yes. So then for the mission, they need to answer questions to eliminate players not to eliminate players, but to eliminate them as the possibility of being the person who was poisoned. If they properly identify the victim at the end, they can add $20,000. And right off the bat, the 3 players who won shields are moved into the carriage because they're safe, obviously. First question. The players who are safe are the ones born in the same year as another player. So they all start comparing birth years, though MJ isn't happy about revealing such secret information. Sandra and Larsa were born the same year, which surprises Sandra because she thinks Larsa looks 10 to 12 years older than her. And yes, she said that on international television. So I'm sure Larsa was thrilled when she saw that line on TV.
She said it with such almost disgust.
Yes.
It was so funny.
Well, can I now follow in her footsteps? Because Dan and Kevin were the same year and the same year as me, which, first of all, I was surprised that they were the same age. Like Dan, I just think Dan looks older than Kevin, but also looks older. Maybe I've got a really bad impression of myself, but I was like, I'm the same age as him. Like, I thought Dan was like, I don't know, and he's mid to late 40s or something. I don't know.
I mean, when I found out your age, I was surprised too. You do have a young face, I will say, as everyone can tell from listening to the podcast.
I was not surprised.
Oh.
Thanks, Rob.
You're welcome.
So yeah, those 2 also share a birth year. So those 4 are safe and moved into the carriage. The second question is sung by a choir to the tune of dum dum da dum dum da dum da dum da dum. I'm not going to sing the whole clue. They ask who in the group was trusted most by Johnny Bananas, and it applies to 2 of them. The group quickly decides it's CT and Trishelle, which was kind of obvious since they're the 3 players from the challenge. Third question is who among the marchers wore red in the Scarecrow mission? This gets 4 more of them into the carriage and leaves MJ, Parvati, and Ekin-Su as the possible victim. In the carriage, almost everyone believes MJ will die. Maybe that's why she wore white. This was what she wanted to be buried in rather than go into a funeral. Janelle sums it up by saying it wouldn't make sense to go after Ekin-Su because she's useless and a messy game player.
It's also amazing. I've said this kind of already, but I'm amazed that even at this point, when it gets down to the last 3, that Ekin-Su has not remembered taking a drink.
Yes.
Although I think that's because Ekin-Su was hammered last night, so doesn't remember anything. But
that may be, yes.
I think that's why it was a genius move to target her, because she was so drunk and she wouldn't remember. But she was very drunk. And she took a sip out of her cup and then gave the cup back. So it wasn't like, here is a drink. It was like a little sip. So I don't think that's why she remembered it. It wasn't like, I've made you a drink, here, have this. So I think that was very sneaky and quite a clever way of doing it.
Yeah, I do
too. They reach the end of their walk and find 3 coffins and a grave already dug in the ground. The 3 remaining players have to get into the coffins, and then each of the other players votes on who they believe was poisoned by placing a black rose into the appropriate coffin. Player after player drops roses on MJ, noting that she's well liked and outspoken. Both Dan and Phaedra note that it's more important to go with the group than to try to win the $20,000. So they vote MJ along with literally everyone else. I mean, they're both right, but it would also be really silly to break from the unanimous vote, no matter whether they were traitors or not. Why make yourself stand out?
Yeah.
And with only two of them, they're not going to win the $20,000 anyway.
Yeah. My favorite part here was that Tamra and Larsa actually think MJ's dead. So they stand over and Tamra says, "I love you." And Larsa says, "Rest in peace." I'm like, they're not really going to bury her alive, It's okay. Also, can I ask a question? David, you will, I think, know the answer to this. So Parvati is wearing a headband her thing?
It is for this show. It has not been in the past, but apparently she decided that it is for this show.
Yeah. Is it a hangover from her? Was she a Survivor person?
Yes.
Is it a hangover from her buff from Survivor?
No, I don't think so.
I wondered if she was branding herself.
I think she just decided she likes it as a fashion accessory and bought a whole different bunch of colors of them.
And she referenced it herself, but Dan also called her a Black Widow. Is that something from Survivor Days?
Yes.
So why is she called the Black Widow?
So several women, including Suri, got together on their season and started picking off the men. Right. And so they were known as the Black Widow Brigade. Though you two can see, other people can't, that I have a poster behind me. And on the poster, the Black Widow Brigade is near the top.
Okay.
In the rule that talks about scheming and plotting. And so, as a matter of fact, the person who drew the poster was a contestant on Survivor who has, also, he was a cartoonist, but he's gotten even more into it. And he made this poster. He was the most notorious person voted out by the Black Widow Brigade because they convinced him to give up immunity, saying that will prove your trust in us.
Oh.
Yes. And then they voted him out. And so yes, there's a reason they're the Black Widow Brigade.
I did not pick up on that. I thought they just invented a phrase on the spot.
No.
Okay, I didn't.
No, she referenced it herself when she was walking down the corridor with the chalice in her hand, something about being a Black Widow. And I thought, oh, that's weird. And then Dan said it. I was like, wait, where's this come from?
So yes, that is where. But to my knowledge, it has nothing to do with the headbands. Now, Alan drags out the announcement of which of the three was poisoned, but eventually slams the coffin lid on Ekin-Su, much to the surprise of everyone. Well, everyone but three of them. Peter, I think, immediately says MJ is the traitor, as Dan says it doesn't make any sense. And I think I rewound this multiple times, and it's very quick. I believe it was Peter who was the one who said it doesn't make any sense. And then I think he says it a little later, too, so that corresponds. So, yeah, they're already like, why Ekin-Su? And this is the thing that I was mentioning earlier. Everybody is trying to think about this logically. And yes, from a logical standpoint, it would have made the most sense to get rid of someone like MJ. But in this situation, Parvati just had to go with someone who was available and would drink from a rusty cup.
Yeah.
And, after seeing the outfit that MJ wore to the funeral, I don't think she would have come within 10 feet of that chalice. And, like you said, Rob, being already drunk, Ekin-Su was a very good potential target. So she was a target of opportunity, and everybody is treating it like the traitors were sitting up there going, ha, we're going to get rid of Ekin-Su.
Yeah, which is, so it's ended up working out in the traitors' favor, I think.
Right.
The fact that ironically, there wasn't much chance to really plan it out very, very carefully.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remembered something else from earlier. In that moment in the kitchen, when Parvati gives the chalice to Ekin-Su, there's a very distinct shot, like a sort of reaction shot of MJ on the other side of the table. And they're presenting it as if she's spotted it and she's staring at them. So I thought they were sort of foreshadowing that later on she would bring it up. But it doesn't ever come up. So But there's definite shot. Maybe it will in another episode, but
I
there was
feel
a
like
definite shot
they,
of that.
they did show, and they also show. Is it Tamara? Is that
Or Tamra?
Tamara? Sorry, yeah. I think it showed her as well, looking
Mm,
almost like, oh, I've caught something there. But again, nothing came up. But
yeah.
I just think, why would you get that drunk in a game like this? Why would this is not Love Island?
She's British.
I mean,
Well, that's true.
she's not the brightest bulb.
No.
We established that from the get-go. She thinks she's very intelligent, but she is not the brightest bulb. And yeah, like you said, Love Island, she's probably like, oh, there's alcohol. This is what we do,
Yeah.
and it could be that those looks you're talking about came just because she was drunk and loud. Like,
Probably.
like MJ was like, what the
What
hell's
is wrong
going
with
on
you?
over there?
Well, they
I mean,
did.
because like at one point, Ekin-Su even said, I mentioned it earlier, I love you, Parvati. You're definitely not a traitor, and
Yeah, day 4, I love you.
yeah,
But actually, they all seemed to think she was a traitor as well. Like a lot of the women were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Ekin-Su's a traitor. She's too over the top. She's too
Right.
loud. She's acting too much." So I think that was just her being drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone taking
and
it,
maybe
just
that
being
was
annoyed
also
at
the
her.
reasons for the looks. Like, oh, there she
Yes,
is overacting.
exactly. Yeah, true.
So once the players get back to the mansion for dinner, they break into groups again. Dan repeats that murdering Ekin-Su made no sense because she had heat on her, and CT says it was probably done to cause confusion. Well, it was done, and it caused confusion, but it was not done to cause confusion. Now, Sandra tells us her strategy is to get close to the housewives and be good with everyone. And Larsa runs the housewives, but she also has a big mouth and gets under Sandra's skin. Now, this sounds like a former Survivor player, Russell Hantz. I think I mentioned last time that he was on, or either last time or maybe in one of our UK Survivor podcasts. He was on back-to-back seasons of Survivor, made it to the end of both by just ripping through people and not caring about the social game at all. And therefore didn't win either one because he didn't care about the social game at all. At one point in his second season, so it was a returnee season, Sandra was on it. This was her second season as well. And he bluntly asked Sandra if she was with him or against him. And she said, I'm against you, Russell. And she was. And she beat him at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just funny that now she's having to deal with Larsa, and she's dealt with Russell Hand. She's dealt with much worse than Larsa. But, even so, she's like, she gets under my skin. Now, I also want to take this opportunity to expand on the history of Sandra a little because I definitely did not do her justice last week as we were fitting 3 episodes into one podcast. Earlier this week, I posted a photo on social media of me and Sandra when I met her at a Survivor Winners at War premiere party in early 2020. Now, for anyone who's listening to this and doesn't know what that is, that was season 40. It was all the players were winners, thus the name, Winners at War. And Matthew, I know you at least saw that photo. And so
Thank you for that.
and afterwards I said, damn it, I should have held on to it and used that. Now, I had mentioned previously that she's been on multiple seasons of the show and won it twice. But I forgot to mention somehow that for season 39, Island of the Idols, she and another well-known player returned not to play, but to coach. And Survivor built a gigantic statue of her head to place on the island. And so this is how she is regarded in, Survivordom. They literally created a giant statue of her. So I wanted to, when I realized I hadn't mentioned that, I had to go back and, make sure I, corrected the record.
Because the same thing happened with Dan, didn't it, in Big Brother? He got called back in to be a coach.
He did get called to be a coach,
and then
they
joined the
made
game
into players,
which was stupid. But yes, I thought that was stupid. But
yes, and one reason he lost, as a matter of fact,
exactly.
But these two were the only interaction they had. They were on their own island, and on the island, they allegedly built this gigantic shelter structure And I say allegedly, the person she was with is Boston Rob, and he had a construction background, but a lot of people think that, maybe some staff helped a little bit. But what would happen is you would win a reward or you would win something and you'd get to go to the Island of the Idols, and poof, Rob and Sandra were there, and they would teach you things and, give you advice and maybe give you advantages and things of that nature. So, so that was the only interaction. It was very brief.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, Parvati, who was also at the same party I mentioned, but who I didn't get to talk to because she was busy talking to her friends instead. She was asked who she thinks the traitor is and says it must be Larsa. The only reason MJ would be safe is if a traitor is close to her and using her. And I'm appreciating the way Parvati is using this, this type of logic. It's a more experienced type of game analysis that we're hearing from her and Dan and the other gamers when it comes to these sorts of situations. Like they're thinking steps ahead. Now, Kevin and Janelle seem to agree, and Janelle even reminds us of how Larsa stood up and gave a toast to Marcus the previous night. I mean, that's a great thing to point out. I don't know how she managed to get the poison into someone else's drink during that toast, but yeah, if you're going to stand up and make a big deal of making a toast, people are going to remember that.
But isn't that toast he's her partner, right?
Yes.
Dating. So
yes,
saying like cheers, goodbye,
right,
like here's to you. That seems really normal to me. Like that seems like a logical thing that they would do.
Yes, I think that they were saying, and that was how she got people to drink. Was to ensure, but the question is how, they don't know how the person was poisoned.
No, they don't. Yeah, no, I didn't put two and two together for that. So
yeah,
I just thought, why are they questioning why she would cheers her own partner who's been eliminated off the show? It doesn't make any sense to me, but that makes sense now.
Larsa, Phaedra, Cherie, and Sandra run into Janelle in the hallway, while Larsa continues her insistence that it's a man. Janelle tries to debate her, but Larsa insists that they can more easily narrow it down, and with it being a man, because there are fewer of them. So they go to the photo wall as Janelle just rolls her eyes, as Janelle does.
Can I make a point here?
Yeah.
I was going to say this at the start, but I'll put it in now. I don't know Janelle. You both know who she is. Is she just always deeply unpleasant? Is that just her?
Yes.
My only impression of her every time she's on screen is, why would anyone want to be around you? Like is it her character? Is it real?
I mean, she's certainly unpleasant to the people she does not like.
Yes, exactly.
Which if you also don't like those same people, it's very amusing.
I feel like she was a very good ally to the people she did like in Big Brother, like very good, very close, very protective. But yeah, if she doesn't like you,
I feel like as a viewer, she doesn't like me.
Yeah. I've seen it on her Twitter. Yeah, she doesn't like you.
Yeah. Yes. So anyway, they go to they're at the photo wall. Larsa says it's not Bergie. Kevin isn't smart enough, so at least they all agree on that. And she's been questioning Dan. It can't be John. It might be CT, and CT is an alpha, so it's probably him. Sandra takes this information and runs straight to Dan and Kevin, telling them what's happened and that she's loyal to the gamers, so she wants all of them to target Larsa. Now, what's interesting to me is when Janelle was describing the different groups, and I mentioned it earlier, I thought the names were like just names she had put in her own head. Like, these are the gamers and these are the house. But then we see other people referring to them that way, like Sandra saying, I'm loyal to the gamers. And I realize it must be fairly well known among everybody. Like, oh, there's the gamers group. I mean, housewives is obvious because that's literally their job titles, I guess. But it's just interesting. I just kind of assumed that Janelle had come up with these classifications, but it seems like everybody has come up with these classifications.
I think it's an easy way to clump people together. And if I was in that kind of celebrity situation, I would be thinking there's one housewife traitor, there's one gamer traitor, and then there's one other traitor. I'd be wrong because it's two gamer traitors, but I would be looking for one person out of each of those tribes.
Right.
And I think that's a good way to look about it. So now they've got those groups. That would be the best way to use them, in my opinion.
Right. I mean, if Alan had picked all three, I suspect you would have been right. But because the third one was,
Yes,
was chosen by the first two, it can go against that idea.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So after that, to the round table with these ideas already floating in people's heads. Janelle immediately opens it up by saying someone either ate or drank something. She brings up Larsa's toast to Marcus, saying it was weird. Larsa responds that she thinks Janelle is weird. So there, I'm rubber, you're glue, and we're back in second grade.
I love when people do that at round table.
Yeah.
So, one person is like, I suspect you, and they just immediately go, well, I suspect you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have watched some of the Real Housewives, not all of them, but this is a very much a Real Housewives thing where you're like, I don't like you. Well, I don't like you. So it just seems like they brought that into the TV, into this show. It doesn't work very well in this. You kind of, it's not a good argument as to why you're going to evict somebody. I just don't like you, but it seems to be thrown around a bit.
Yeah.
I'll also openly admit that my theory from last week is utterly out the window going into round table. So our last episode, David, I suggested, well, Larsa's basically proven herself a faithful now. Like no one's ever going to suspect her because like her partner's just been killed off and she's all upset. Like they might as well just murder her now because no one's ever going to suspect it. Here we are, and everyone is gunning for Larsa going into round table. So I just thought, oh, what the hell do I know?
But
yeah,
do you think it's? Oh, sorry, carry on.
No, go ahead.
But do you think that's just because half of the people just don't like her? They just can't take her. So they're like, well, we might as well just get rid of her because we don't like her.
I do. Yeah, I definitely think that's a big part of it. But, my very next note is Larsa brings up the point I figured. Do they really think she murdered Marcus? And Peter says nobody would suspect that. So it's brilliant if she's a traitor. So it's the old, double bluff idea that, now it is brilliant as a traitor. I don't think Larsa would still ever do it. I don't think she has the emotional wherewithal to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone other than Sam in Australia too would do that. I think he is the only person that would do that. Knock his mum out or his girlfriend out or anyone out, his grandma out just to win.
Yeah, it's one reason that, Matthew, you and I have talked about how I want to see one of these related pairs have one traitor and one not traitor.
Yeah.
And, to see how it would really play out in that situation.
Am I right in thinking that one of the next, is it Scandinavian ones, is going to be all couple, like all pairs?
Oh my, I have no idea.
It's already happened. So a Norwegian season was all pairs that had.
I think Norway. I think it was. I remember that being a thing. I haven't seen.
Okay, that one. I feel like both of you are working on a lie together here. So I don't know.
I'm a traitor with everyone.
Yes. So Larsa continues with her psychoanalyzing and attacking an alpha male, bringing up CT as expected. They go back and forth a bit, and then Kevin says he doesn't like the alpha male idea. And MJ says, well, that's, it could be you. And he asks why she would think he's so insecure that he'd be threatened by another man, which I think is a really good response and better than most responses that we see at the round table. He adds, if I were a traitor, I'd get rid of you first. I find you highly annoying. And, I didn't know Kevin at all from before this show, but I'm liking him more and more for amusement value alone.
Yeah. I think that was an excellent response because I feel like, maybe this is again the lives that the housewives live. It's like they're all dating sportsmen and big businessmen, all these alpha males. And he's obviously a very successful person in his own right. And so to be like, well, why would I ever be jealous or worried or confused, concerned over some other alpha male? I really enjoyed that. I agree. I don't know him, but I'm really warming to him. I kind of like that he's not too clued in. He's not taking it too seriously. He's just riding along kind of unnoticed a little bit. But when he needs to, he gives that bite back when it has to happen.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point that I hadn't thought about is in their, I'll call it normal lives or their show lives, the housewives, they probably do deal with a bunch of alpha males who are jealous of each other and would take each other out to get rid of the competition. So it probably impacts the way that they're thinking.
Definitely. I can you can see the lives that they lead. It's all fake, really. It's all glitz, glamour. It's even when they were saying, "Oh, we're not actors. We're not a scripted show." It is scripted reality. They're not given a script, but they're told to go there. They're told to meet this person. They are acting. They are playing a part.
Yeah. No, they would never act. Never.
They would never know.
No. So now before we get to that point, Tamra joins in on the attack and says, Kevin, speaking of acting, was overacting. And, this actually leads right into it because Parvati turns the table and says, yes, actors can perform, but so can housewives. And that leads into what you just said. They just are living their lives. They don't act. Phaedra has had enough of this, and she says not to come for the housewives. They are not a gang, as they're acting exactly like a gang. And Parvati says it looks that way because of how they gather and walk around the house. And now all I can think of in my head is the movie Warriors, which you two may be too young for, but it's anybody who is old enough will remember the movie Warriors, and it's about gang wars and has a song about the Warriors come out to play, which I will not sing for you.
Sing the song or it's a lie.
If I do sing the song, we will immediately lose listeners. So, and it's set to the tune of him clinking bottles together too. So,
lovely.
Anyway, I would add, besides what she said about the way they walk around the house, the way they also ganged up on CT and Kevin. But Phaedra continues that she only works with Tamra and Cherie. So don't do the housewives things, honey. Don't do that, Parvati.
I love how she said that.
Yes, the way she emphasized Parvati's name. It just, even though there was no threat there, it sounded like a deadly threat.
If you could emphasize every syllable of someone's name in a I don't know how she did it, but the way she said it, it was like, you're done for after this.
And so, immediately we know it should be an interesting Traitors turret later.
Definitely.
But besides that, I want to note that Phaedra's defense that she hadn't worked with the others is essentially meaningless. Most of the players here haven't worked with each other, but they find things in common. Like, obviously, we've talked about Sandra and Parvati have played together before. Dan and Janelle, CT and Trishelle. But they never played with the others in the so-called gamers group. So sharing common interests or similar reasons for being well-known can definitely be enough to bond people. And I think you walk in there and you see other housewives, you're immediately going to, tend to congregate with them.
Yeah.
And I thought when she said it, again, when she said, I've only worked with this person and this person, I thought she meant within the game. And that's when I was thinking, well, why are you saying that? Like, don't put out there that you're closely aligned to two people, because I think that's worse than voting. I think that's more of a problem for a game than voting for Ekin-Su last time. If she's going to openly say I'm working with people, but maybe, yes, she meant within the Housewives franchise, I've worked with these people. But still, you are proving that you are linked to these two, and you're going to get a closer looking at.
Exactly. So with that, it is time to vote. Dan votes Larsa. Tamra votes Kevin. CT votes Larsa, saying he's not sure, but if she keeps falsely accusing her, he has to defend himself, which is very true. Cherie votes John, which is a really dumb vote if she's trying to help Larsa.
Yeah.
Bergie votes Larsa. MJ votes Kevin. Phaedra votes Kevin because he came up as a great actor, which is weird because what was actually said was he was overacting, which is the opposite of being a great actor. It's like saying William Shatner is a great actor.
I am sorry, but he is.
Yeah.
He's one of the best. Don't diss my Star Trek.
Yeah.
I
My
don't
Star
think-
Trek too, but I could be objective about
There's no objection. No.
Yeah.
I just double checked as well on the NBC website, like, because I was like, is Kevin on there because he's an actor? But he's on a reality show, like he's on something called Bling Empire. So I mean, I'm sure he does acting as well, but that's not why he's there. He's not like an A-lister. So
So
you
I've
need
not
to
heard of
stop
that
going on
show.
about it.
No. Okay. Interesting.
So, I mean, they all have jobs outside their, Phaedra's a lawyer and I don't know what the rest do. But so, yeah, it makes sense that, there could be an actor on, these shows. I mean, through the years, there have been many, many reality shows. They had one on Ozzy Osbourne and, he's obviously was still a singer and, if you call it singing, but yes, he was a singer.
Like Janelle's real job is a demon. Outside of
I hope you interview her. She's saying no.
I bet she'd laugh.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, we continue. Sandra votes Larsa because she causes a lot of chaos. Peter votes MJ because she should have been murdered. John votes Kevin. Janelle votes Larsa. Larsa votes CT. Parvati votes Larsa. Kevin, Trishelle both vote Larsa. And looking at the votes, you can see the difference between those who have played competitive reality shows before and those who haven't, because those who did stuck together. And meanwhile, the housewives spread their votes around in a way that, like I said, for Cherie's vote, won't help Larsa. It will not help to vote for random other people. You have to vote as a unit to try to, get the plurality of the votes there.
Yeah, in general, that's always what I say about the show and the gameplay. There probably are exceptions if you're really clever. Like
Yes.
maybe sometimes, and I think I'm not going to spoil anything. I think we've maybe seen a little bit of this in UK series right now.
Yeah.
If you're smart enough, you might write down a name because you think long term you can use it as evidence to sort of go back
Right.
to and say, well, remember that week I didn't vote with and I voted this person, and you may have some really smart plan to look back
Mhm.
if you're still around in the game. So if you're really good at it, you probably could do this wisely. But
I think that's a great plan, but not if your ally is under fire. You need
Right.
to all vote together to get somebody else out and make sure that your ally stays in the game. So
Yeah.
I think Cherie like being, oh, John, because I don't know who else to vote for. I don't even think he's a traitor. And then I'm jumping forward again after at the end when she's like, and when whoever goes, and she's like, don't all act surprised. Don't you all act surprised? And I'm like, why are you joining in the game now when you wouldn't vote
Yes.
for someone as a traitor in the actual vote? You can't be annoyed. You can't be upset when you don't actually participate in the proper game. So
Right. I mean, to me, it goes back to Phaedra being upset that Ekin-Su was poisoned when she
exactly.
wouldn't participate either,
No.
and so, but yeah, Larsa goes to the Circle of Truth and, of course, reveals she's been a faithful since day one. Now we've hit a pet peeve of mine. Several people have said this over the course of the seasons. You can't go from being a traitor to being a faithful. So if you're faithful, yes, you've been a faithful since day one. There is no other way to go about it. You can say, I've been a traitor since day one, or I was a recruited traitor, but there's no such thing as a faithful except from day one.
this never occurred to me, but yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it hadn't occurred to me either. So I wasn't sure where this, but that is very, very true. But I think it really emphasizes that you're a faithful. I've been a faithful since day one. It's just they're obviously lost in that moment of just really trying to drive
Right.
it home that I'm innocent. You guys are all wrong. But yeah, no, you're right. The logic stands.
Now, before they all leave the round table, a couple people wonder what's next. And Tamara says the housewives have to stick together. So remember, Matthew, a few minutes ago, you said, oh, it's terrible to announce, or maybe one of you did.
I think it was me.
Now.
Yeah, I think it was
Rob,
me.
you said it's terrible to announce who you're working with. Well, Tamara just did that.
Yes.
She did that in front of everyone. Uh, and yes, was it kind of obvious? Yeah, but it's still not something you say out loud in front of everyone.
No,
When they
definitely not.
break up into their groups, Cherie continues saying the gamers are playing the shit out of them. Well, yeah, that's what they do. It's literally in the name of their group. They're called the gamers. That should have been a clue. And Janelle's name keeps coming up. Meanwhile, CT tells Trishelle that maybe the majority of the traitors are non-competitive reality show people, and that's why the reality show people keep getting picked off. No, but okay, sure, you know. Um, and then the clock strikes midnight, and it's time for bed or for murdering. Wait, hold on. I need Matthew. I need you to step in here and say murdering in the proper Scottish way.
I will do, but at the very beginning of the episode, the first note that I wrote was just about the way Alan says previously on the Traitors.
Yes.
Like the first thing, I was like, "Oh my God, Alan!" So yes, it's time for murder.
Uh, Things are, as we expected, immediately tense as Phaedra leads off the traitors' discussion with, "That wasn't cool." Dan either seems to have missed it or is totally acting because he just looks clueless. Like, what's wrong? I have no idea. The look on his face. But Phaedra continues that nobody likes Parvati and everyone thinks she's a traitor. Now, personally, I question that because I think the only people who might believe that are the housewives.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Phaedra says everyone, what she means is everyone who I talk to, which are only the housewives.
I actually just think she means me right now.
Yeah,
me right now
too.
in this
Yes.
moment. Everyone hates you. But that's just me.
Yes. Yeah, it's like you're a liar and everyone thinks so. It's like who's everyone? I don't know. And but she keeps going, saying they can work together if Parvati plays fair, and adds to us that what Parvati did was unacceptable. And Parvati, I mean, at one point tries to get a word in edgewise, but doesn't. So she just kind of stands there in stunned silence. And I guess we'll have to wait till next week to find out her response, because that's where we leave it. Just her stunned that Phaedra would talk to her this way.
Well, up until this point, up until the round table, really, I thought Phaedra was amazing as a traitor. I thought she played such a great game of just sitting back, saying enough, but not saying too much. But she has taken this first little tiny kind of kink in her game and just gone crazy.
Yes.
And I think the last thing you do to your fellow traitors is threaten them because
Yes.
it's just never gonna. There's two of them, one of you. You never you pretend that you're okay with it. You're like, oh yeah, I don't mind. You kind of said that, and then you go and get rid of one of them behind their back. You don't tell them to their face, "I'm mad at you. You're playing this game unfairly. You better stop," because they're just going to cut you off.
Yeah, and that's almost the identical note that I have as well, is because last week I said Phaedra was doing a good job and had friends in the game, and I even said I thought she was my winner pick, and now I think this will be her undoing. It may be Parvati's undoing as well, but I don't think Phaedra will make it to the end of the game. I'm not sure she'll make it, another 2 weeks.
No,
and so I just think that. Yeah, she is getting way too upset. And on top of it, the other two traitors are both in the so-called gamer group.
exactly. We've got two people that are more than willing to do the deed when it needs to be done. We've got a Black Widow and we've got Mr. Charm. So she, unfortunately, I think might not last even next week. It might be her time to go.
Yeah.
I think that in general, this episode really crystallized how in the Traitors things can shift so quickly from episode to episode, like as well as Phaedra. Remember last time Dan was almost gone. Like Dan was really under scrutiny, and it felt like this episode no one spoke about him as a suspect. And also you mentioned winners picks. So David, last time, because I hadn't really thought about it properly, I suggested that Kevin and Peter were going to be there at the end because they made this secret pact to pretend to not like each other. That episode, that nothing came of that today.
Right.
Like that didn't rear its head. they didn't seem to interact at all. So I don't know if they've now just forgotten it, but
I mean,
they're still there. So I'm sticking to my theory.
I thought about that, and it was such a non-factor that I literally couldn't remember if it was two people on US or two people in UK. I was like, okay, who were they that did that? I can't remember now, but whatever it was, it's gone. So I didn't really think about it much more. So thank you for reminding me.
But the problem with that probably was that Kevin had a little heat on him this time. So if Peter had joined in, it's really emphasizing that. So he may have gone. So I think Peter probably just reined it back because he likes him, doesn't want him to go. So that he didn't have a beef with him this week anyway.
Right. Now we do have the Traitors postmortem show. Now it's no Traitors Uncloaked, but this one was only 9 minutes long, and a good chunk of it is clips from the show that we just watched. But there are a few interesting things, or at least interesting enough for me to discuss. Hopefully I'll get this done in less than 9 minutes, because that's kind of silly. But then again, we sometimes spend like 2 hours talking about a 1 hour show. So I guess it's appropriate. Parvati tells so we don't get the reveals like the Traitors Uncloaked. We don't see them finding out who the traitors are and all those other things. It's just more interview style. Parvati tells us she wanted to target MJ or someone like that, but felt that nobody else would drink out of the chalice. So she went for Ekin-Su instead. So, telling us something we kind of already knew. Ekin-Su tells us she surprised people with her intelligence. Sure.
Yes, we forgot.
Yes, I was surprised it was so low. I mean, I suppose you could go with that, but
didn't she also say on the show that she got killed because she was so glamorous, so clever, so like everyone loved her, and then was like, and I look amazing in red lipstick, and wasn't wearing red lipstick. I was like, what is she actually talking about?
And that's it. It's pretty funny that somewhere she was watching this episode and finding out she wasn't actually targeted at all for any of those reasons, let alone for being smart. It's because she was the only one gullible enough or drunk enough to take the chalice.
Yeah.
And then she also talks about how everyone was two-faced, as if we should be surprised by that on a show called The Traitors. Then they move to Larsa. Parvati says Larsa was going after her from the moment their eye masks were removed, which is interesting because Parvati wasn't a traitor at that point. But as you recall, that was when Larsa insisted that she had super hearing and detected Alan raising his arm to touch Parvati's shoulder, which never happened. But Parvati notes that Larsa had the ability to bring people in and point them in a certain direction, which was Parvati. Larsa also clearly had the ability to convince herself of things that weren't true and then act like they were absolute fact. From the imaginary super hearing to the non-existent alpha male running the Traitors that we discussed before. Dan chimes in and also felt like Larsa suspected him. He and Phaedra both talk about how personality traits can come into play, and a number of people don't like Parvati for those reasons. Dan also notes that people got sick of Larsa throwing out random names just because she felt like they were traitors. And he added that she could have lasted longer if she kept some opinions to herself, which is very good advice for future players of this game.
I'm surprised she didn't say that she was a psychic with all the opinions she had.
Yes.
I'm surprised she didn't come in saying I'm a psychic and an empath, and I know who all the traitors are.
Plus my super hearing,
and my super hearing. Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yes, she could be like the whole Justice League there. She did agree in what she said that she had said too much. And says this game is a quiet game and she shouldn't have been acting like she was on Housewives, which is something we, discussed earlier. And yes, that's true, Larsa, but it's a little too late to realize it. So yeah, I do want to say, going back, and I know we discussed this a little, but kind of in closing, almost closing anyway, Parvati lucked out that Ekin-Su was so clueless and nobody else noticed her giving the drink. She could have been easily called out and found out, been banished. I mentioned on the UK podcast that we did last week that as soon as they were told about the poison twist, I figured the host would announce at least part of it. And they if we're sitting here and we see the host say, send a note that says there's going to be this murder in plain sight, and we can think, oh, they should be prepared for some of this to be announced, then the players should also be on their toes enough to also foresee this and therefore take greater pains to hide what they were doing. It did seem like Parvati was in desperation mode, but like I said, I think she mostly lucked out in this case.
I think this versus the UK one in terms of ease of poisoning, this was very easy. It just happened. It didn't even really need any planning. Whereas,
right.
Yeah, in the UK one, it seemed to be almost like time was going to run out. Something's got to happen quickly. And it was a bit more like, oh, yeah, have my drink, have this drink, and just give it. And that was a bit too obvious, I suppose. Whereas this really was, here's a little sip. Okay, we're done. And she was very lucky, but it worked out great.
Yeah. And, the whole thing with the timing, I mean, we frequently, Matthew and I frequently talk about the silliness of the timing of some of the missions. And that applies here too, because let's say they hadn't poisoned someone by the time the chimes struck.
Yes.
What were they going to do? Just cancel the choir and the carriage and the horses and move on to something else? I mean,
Well, I think with I know we're not talking about the UK one. It took them so long to find the chalice, whereas in this one they found it immediately. So
right.
They must have had so much more time to kind of get that going.
Well, and it also seemed like in the UK one, almost everyone already had drinks, and I think that may be because of how long it took to get the chalice.
Yeah.
Although clearly Ekansu had a number of drinks by the time they got to her. So maybe maybe it was the same in both cases and
she drank everyone's drink, I think.
Yes. Yes. Some other closing thoughts. I had said last week, that I worried that none of my favorites were going to end up winning. I do think Sandra has positioned herself well. We'll have to see where it leads, but she's playing a quieter game. I don't know that she'll be able to stay in good with the housewives now that she revealed the information. But on the other hand, pardon?
She's picked her side now.
Yeah.
It's known.
I think so, but I guess we'll see if she can kind of worm her way back into that group there.
I guess the only thing now is Larsa really was the queen bee. She did seem to be the one running everything. And now they're going to be a little bit lost. And maybe they will still need Sandra and they will invite her back in to take over that queen bee role.
I think Phaedra's going to try to take it over, which will not work well for her.
I think she will as well.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if Phaedra is banished next week. Like, one of you said, I said she might not make it 2 weeks. Like, it might not make it next week. I don't know, but I guess it just depends on, it's possible that the response we see from Parvati will be something like, oh, I didn't mean to, aim at you, and don't worry, we can, iron this all out. And then, like, for maybe a week, they'll try to leave her alone. I don't know. It just depends. It would be hard to stand there, take that from anyone, and then even pretend to go back to, being friendly with them.
I think if I have to pick my favorites, if it's a traitor, I obviously hope Dan wins, but I don't know if he can. I don't know if he can last in this game. I feel like it's a little bit harder to hide in this than it is in Big Brother, where you can just play a complete social game.
Right.
This doesn't. It doesn't. And I think that's how he's trying to play this. Being too quiet, it's not going to work. You have to get involved. And then on the other current, anyway, faithful side, I don't know. I just really like Bergie. Is that he just seems so underrated and everything. When he figured out the pattern in that challenge, and everyone was like, "Oh, shut up! There's no pattern," and he's like, "There's a pattern." I just think he's really trying so hard, and nobody is interested in it. So I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him.
I also noticed every time Alan says Bergie, I think he's saying Fergie, and I'm like, "Who's Fergie.
The singer. She's a late entry.
Yeah. I'm like, what? Oh, Fergie.
It reminds me of the message I sent you for the UK, where I was like, "Wait, is there someone named Bonnie on this show?" Because I'd swear Claudia just said Bonnie, and it turned out it was Molly. And I also didn't know there was someone named Molly on the show because she had so little screen time at that point. So
yeah. Out of the three traitors, then I'm skipping back a bit here. I'm impressed the most. I think Phaedra's good entertainment. She really makes me laugh, when she's like, "Oh, sweet Lord, baby Jesus," and she's such an entertaining character. But I think Parvati out of the three will go the furthest. I'm really impressed with her.
Ooh, no,
I would not have said that this time.
Oh,
Or before. I would not have said that before now. I'm impressed with her, but I don't know. I think that there are eyes on her, and I think that basically she and Phaedra are going to take each other out. It's going to be like a murder pact where they each murder, and each gets the other banished. And it. I don't know that anybody will realize if let's say that Parvati does come after Phaedra in the round table. I don't know that anyone will be smart enough, like they have been on some other recent shows, to say, "Oh, that's a traitor going after a traitor."
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that I don't think Parvati is in it for the long haul. I think Dan's strategy of being quiet while these two fight will benefit him.
And just look confused, as if to say, "What, did one of you annoy the other one? I didn't even notice." Like that.
Right.
That's a good way to stay very neutral. But I think Parvati's been very, very good, but I don't think she should have said at the round table out loud to everyone that one of the housewives has to be a traitor. That should have been spread around quietly, and then someone else would have brought it up. Put it in Kevin's ear, he would have said it on the table at some point. Yeah. You shouldn't be the one making that comment when that's your person you're supposed to be working with.
Right. So, all right. Any other thoughts on this episode?
I have thoughts on the series. I'm really loving it. I think in both the UK and this series too, I feel like the production value is so much higher. The music and everything and the atmosphere. And Alan, I think he's so amazing this time around. He was great last time, but I just feel like he is embracing the role to the max, and he's giving so much in. I just love it. I just think he's amazing. So I'm thinking so far the series is brilliant. And although I didn't know a lot of the cast, I feel like they are entertaining. I think it's more entertaining than the first series anyway, with the people that they've got on the cast this year. I'm thinking it's great.
Yeah, and I had said, I think I had admitted this last week, that I was worried when this cast was announced, because I figured that it would be a lot of people who are just there for TV exposure, like all the housewives, and that then there'd be these beefs between like Sandra and Parvati, and it would be very little of the Traitors game and a lot of people trying to get TV time, like Kate did last season.
Yes,
and so I'm very happy that is not the case, that I've been proven wrong. I also think it benefits from being a all quote unquote celebrity cast rather than being a 50-50. I like all regular people casts. And so I think in general for Traitors games, I would prefer all regular people, but given that they are, that this was like the highest rated premiere of a reality show on Peacock ever, I don't think they're going to change that. They've already announced that they're renewing it for season 3. And so that they're not going to be taking applications. It's all going to be reality people.
It's a shame they can't do both. I feel like at some point the BBC will do a celebrity Traitors. I feel like they will. Yeah.
They just sent him over to the US. They sent John, and
he is not a celebrity. He should not be on this show. I hate seeing him on my television. Get him out now. Come on, get him out.
Unfortunately, he'll probably last a while because he's one of those people that they just don't pay any attention to
Yeah,
because he's so useless that they're just like, yeah, whatever. We're not worried about him.
if
Well,
he
he
wins,
did get a
I'll
vote
be
tonight.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
But because
Yes.
she said he's not a traitor,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think you're a traitor, but I don't know who to vote for. So John, that
Yeah.
he'll get
Uh,
he'll get murdered at some point.
yeah. And then there was an article, and I think Vulture is the website, where they said, I didn't read the whole article. I mostly read summaries of the article. And they were saying, wow, bring back the 50-50 casts. And there has been like unanimous thumbs down on this. Many people that I know, I almost chimed in on Twitter, but I was like, so many other people have said it already. So I'll just say it here. I've already said it multiple times on various podcasts here, where it's like, no, the 50-50 is the worst of all possible worlds because the 50% quote unquote normal people get overshadowed in the edit, especially at the beginning. We saw it in Traitors US 1, and they follow the celebrities around sometimes like puppy dogs. Now, that didn't happen in Canada season 1, but it certainly happened in US season 1. And some of the, normal people would even admit that. So, kind of having the UK and the US versions going at the same time kind of gives us the best of both worlds in that regard. But I'd like to see, like you said, Rob, they should, maybe they should have 2 seasons a year, one regular, one returnees type of thing.
I think that'd be good. But I think the UK celebrity one wouldn't be like big. Well, it might be Big Brother, but our Big Brother's not the same. But it will be contestants. It'll be more like athletes, pop stars. It'll be
retired politicians.
Retired politicians. Yeah,
strictly come dancing dancers or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Be people from reality TV, but not actually competitive ones like Big Brother and stuff. So
Yeah.
It won't be quite as interesting.
Yeah.
You just reminded me, David, talking about comments on articles. I saw a really funny post in a Traitors Facebook fan group. Someone had suggested, hey, what do you all think about a kid's version of the Traitors? And there were about 50 comments. Every single one was just no, absolutely not. God, no. Why would you suggest this? And one reply that made me laugh the most was, yes, if I can send my kids and see them get banished. It really cracked me up.
Genius.
I thought you were going to say, see them get murdered. It's like, oh, that's dark. That is dark.
Now, before we conclude our line game, or game of deception, the Traitor Traitor, David, could you tell us what all of the many things you do online? Where should people be for you? There's so much I can't keep up with it, so you need to tell us.
You do a good job of keeping up with a lot of it, though. If anyone wants to reach out, let me know what they think. I am all over social media and reality TV podcasting. You can find my various accounts through my Linktree at Linktree/David Bloomberg, and there's a dot before the EE in Linktree in the URL there. Or you could find me on most text-based social media like Twitter and Blue Sky is at David Bloomberg. And on the video platforms, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram is at David Bloomberg TV. And because Threads is connected to Instagram, I'm at David Bloomberg TV there instead. Speaking of TikTok, etc., I've been recently posting at least 2 reality TV short videos on those sites each day. So for those of you who have been paying attention and keeping a scorecard, that's up from what I said last week, which was 1. I'm up to 2 because mostly they've been up from the Traitors UK, the Traitors US, the Trust on Netflix, and some Survivor flashback videos from older seasons as well. So follow me on all those places, find all these videos, and say hi.
And Rob is very sensible and doesn't want people stalking him. So we can move right on to conclude our game, the Traitor. Ooh. Ah. So our goal has been to lie to one another throughout our discussion. And again, we'll do a triangle of detection. So I'm going to guess Rob's lie. Rob is going to guess David's. David is going to guess mine. If anyone gets their guess wrong, the other remaining person could jump in and give it a go. I have lied. Have you both lied at some point?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna guess Rob. Now, Rob.
And I want to say I had one lie planned, one, and then you do this to me every time. Jumped in at the exact moment that I was going to lie so I was going to say that it was my year of birth, like at 1983, and it's not my year of birth. And I was so ready, and you were like, "That's my year of birth," and I'm like, "Oh, for God's sake!"
Oh, sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. So I had to make one up on the fly.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute. Now I'm thinking, was he lying when he said that? Now I have to do some math. And
Well, I thought you corroborated it by saying when I found out how old you were.
well, I don't know exactly how old he is. I know roughly how
Oh.
old he is.
Here we go.
Now I have to do some math. So 83. So that would have made you 40 last year.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Or maybe I should just not let
Huh.
I should let you believe.
Okay,
No.
well, it's not my turn yet. Somehow I thought I was guessing Rob's lie when we discussed this ahead of time. So I wrote down stuff Rob said, but it turns out you're guessing Rob's lie. So now I'm really thrown off. So maybe that was your lie, was in the pregame when you
I explained very clearly.
yeah, I
Fair
know.
Well, I wasn't going to guess well, you didn't say it, so I couldn't guess it. So
No.
Rob, I've got a few ideas, right? You said I thought maybe when you said you haven't finished that episode of UK, and I know we laughed about it, but then I thought, no, maybe that really is the lie, even though we joked about it. But I don't know. You we had a pause in recording and you went to quieten down the dog. I thought maybe that was a lie, but I actually do believe that because I know you have
And she's
dogs.
still barking. So
So I feel I do know that you didn't invent a dog. You all right, I'll go for there was something you guessed about a Scandinavian season and you said, "Oh, I think there's going to be a season with like pairs." I think you lied and you have already seen that season and you knew about that and you pretended not to know that
I
was a
have
thing.
no, I have not watched it. I knew it was coming. I didn't realize it was already out. So I apologize. No, that was not it.
Okay. I mean, David, do you want to jump in and steal from
I'll
me?
try. I mean, it's possible that this is true because you seem to know a lot more about it as the time went on. But you said you watched a lot of Real Housewives, and I think that's your lie.
That is my lie. I have never watched Real Housewives. Not once, and nor will I. It's the most, to me, it's an offensive TV program. I will never watch it. So well done.
Well done. And you know what the funny thing is when you said it, I'm sure I saw David take a little note, but in my
Yes.
mind, I was like, ha ha ha, he thinks that's a lie. That's not the lie. And it was the lie. Up next, then, Rob, you're going to guess David's lie.
Well, I don't know if I just misheard or this was the lie, but I think I heard you say that in the mission, the three people with shields went into the carriage first. And as far as I was aware, there was only one person with a shield.
That was not the lie. There were three people. I don't remember who they were because I just wrote three people. I know Janelle was one of them.
I thought it was only Janelle. That's why I.
No, who
There
were the
were-
other two?
You're
There were
right.
three.
There were three.
Oh, okay. Then I just wasn't paying enough attention. I was so sure that was it that I wasn't even listening to anything else.
I think in UK there was only one, but
Oh,
I
maybe
noticed in this US episode there were three because I just sort of was caught off guard because I had forgotten. I was like, oh,
Yes,
three people.
me
on
too.
Shield.
Same.
because I literally
like,
was watching this episode with the equivalent episode on UK this morning, then stopped
Mhm.
to watch this one. So I guess I have confused the two. So
Yes, welcome to
I
the
don't know,
hazards
man.
of watching both at the same time.
yes. So that was my only guess, I'm afraid.
Okay.
I'm going to jump in then. So and get it wrong because I always get it wrong. Right, David, I've got some guesses, and then I'll tell you which one I'm narrowing it down to.
Okay, so I have to keep a straight
you have
face.
to- Not
Hold on,
really.
hold
I
on.
wouldn't look at you.
Let me.
You quoted in Us Weekly article, and I wondered if you made up the quote or something from Deontay, maybe, or you. Oh, I don't think this is it, but it would be really funny when you talked about a film called Warriors that neither Rob nor I know. And I thought, what if he's just invented an entire movie that doesn't exist and we just nodded along? But I think he wouldn't have done that. I'm going to guess for you said you were at the party with Sandra, and then you briefly said, oh, Parvati was there as well, but I didn't speak to her. So was that the lie that Parvati was at this event?
Nope, she was there. She was with her now ex-husband, looking very annoyed at him, in addition to talking to friends. No, earlier on when we were discussing the players speculating on who poisoned whom, I said I went back and checked the video, and
I wrote this down. I've got Tamara offered the drink ? Why didn't I?
Yeah, I didn't go back and check. I totally made that up. I was like, I hope that didn't happen, but I totally made that up.
Just for it is definitely there. It's definitely there.
See, I'd show you my note about the Real Housewives, but I literally can't read it. It looks like it says red Tiswizzles or something like that. So it took me a while to remember what I had written in order to guess yours. So
that's bad. That's annoying.
And now I guess I have to guess yours, Matthew.
Yeah, you usually get me. So
yeah, but the only thing I have I scratched out. Well, I had one other thing, but I don't think it was. I mean, the most obvious one is the whole Facebook group of wanting a kid's version of it. But then you would have had to go through and make up the comment about take my kids, please type of thing. And that made me think it's not that. But it's really the only other thing I had was you mentioned that they had shots of MJ, staring at the situation. That could have been, that seems more realistic than someone suggesting a kid's version of the Traitors on a Facebook group. But then again, Facebook groups are crazy places. So I am going to say that knowing full well it may be wrong.
Both of your suggestions are absolutely true. I did not make those up.
Okay.
And when I tell you what I lied about, I think you're actually going to be really annoyed.
Yeah.
Because Rob almost ruined everything. I lied about being born in the same year.
Oh, I meant to say
and
that.
I did know this because you lied about it the last time we did a podcast as well. You literally told the same lie.
I didn't write that down. We had this discussion not 2 minutes ago, and I started to do the math, and I don't think that's right. And I forgot to write it down. Yes, and then I forgot about it in the 2 minutes that we've had since then.
Because when we did the one about Australia, there was a number and you went, the only reason I remember the safe code was because it's my year of birth, and I was like,
yeah.
No, it's not.
I did. That's weird. I'm used to the same. I also, Rob, sorry, I ruined the game. I was supposed to let you jump in and guess, and I didn't. Were you going to say?
You knew I knew.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it to you, Rob. You knew that was not.
You should give it to me too, because if I had guessed at that moment, I would have guessed that. But
I'm 1984, so I will be 40 this year. So I added a year on.
I didn't think that you were 40 yet. So
Oh, that youthful complexion.
Yes.
Well, that was fun. It should always be 3 people in this game. It's more fun this way. I guess I'll finish off by just reminding everyone that I said this at the start. I am covering UK Traitors right now as well, often with David, every 3rd episode. So that's running concurrently. And for the next episode of our US Traitors coverage, I shall not be here. David will be here with a magical surprise mystery guest. And I'm saying that because we actually don't really know who it will be yet, but it will be someone wonderful and exciting. As always, if you've got questions you want to send in, sometimes people do, we'll happily have a chat about them. So send any thoughts and comments our way, and we'll have a discussion. You can get in touch with the podcast on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok at the Traidar Podcast, or on X at the Traidar Pod. And you can email me as well at thetraidarpodcast@gmail.com. David and Rob, thank you so much. What a great chat. That was really good fun. Hope you've had a nice time. Rob, especially, welcome back.
Yeah, especially me. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed coming back. It's been great fun.
Excellent. Until next time, then keep us on your radar.
Stay traitorous.